Okay, thank you so much, Lee Archer, for joining me today. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and learn a little bit about what you're doing, the women you're supporting, and I guess the challenges that you're overcoming as a group. Um, we at Women's Network Australia are all about empowering women, and that's why I was so thrilled to have this conversation with you because I know you're doing exactly the same thing at Silver Threads and Golden Needles.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit, Lee, about how this came to be, how you got started, and where you're looking to go?
Sure. It's such a funny little story. I've spent most of my career in working in disability and justice as a public servant or in the community sector, and that had been a lot of my focus, particularly thinking about advocacy for disability. I'd left the public service because I never been a very good public servant. I was one of those women that got my late ADHD diagnosis and thought, this is not the place for me. So I went out to be a consultant, had lots of work. I really enjoyed the freedom of being able to make my own decisions and work in the way that I had wanted to. And at the start of COVID, my consulting work all dried up. And I thought, uh-oh, I'm going to have to get a job again. So I got a fantastic job working for a community legal centre managing an elder abuse project, which is a health justice partnership where the lawyers sit within the health network and train up doctors, nurses, allied health to identify and respond to elder abuse. And I had no understanding of what happened in the lives of older people. It was a completely new subject matter for me, and I was so shocked. It took my breath away to understand just how endemic elder abuse is in our community. It's 1 in 6 Australians will face it in any 1 year, and the impacts are just terrible in terms of it shortens your lifespan. It leads to poor health. It means loneliness and lack of social participation. It's really devastating for people. And I just could not believe once I'd started thinking about it, listening to the language and how just in depth, it's like a national sport in our country when you think about ageism. And for women, family violence doesn't stop when you get your seniors card. Often you get elder abuse and family violence combined, and we just don't see it or hear about it. So I just became really obsessed of thinking about the language and how do political change movements change things. Often it's about language and how we speak about people. So I became absolutely obsessed about listening to the ways that we demean older people, particularly women. And for women, it's usually about your looks and your effectiveness as you get older. So I've been bubbling away in my head and thinking about how can I change things. And then somebody in my family said a really dodgy thing and said that he'd been talking about his best mate's wife and said, oh, she's still an attractive woman. And I thought, what is this still? Why are you commenting on your mate's wife's appearance? Like, why do you think that that's okay? But in that still, I thought there's just everything in that assumption that women aren't going to be attractive as they got older. So for me, it lit a fire after that job had finished, thinking, how can I start really pushing to make things different? So I thought, what do older women like to do together? And I thought about the women in my family. I was thinking, knitting, crochet, we learn it from our grandmothers, we do it in groups, we sit there and we make these beautiful things that just get shared amongst the family and don't have another voice. And I thought that would be a great way to get women together to kind of, unpack a really challenging subject. Um, when I became a consultant, I thought, what jobs can't robots do? How am I going to protect myself? I trained to be a facilitator. I did a year's training in that, which was a very wise decision as AI kind of bites all of us. And I thought, all right, it's groups of women talking that will change this. And I thought, all right, how do we design a session that will make things different for women? And that's how I came up with the idea of Silver Threads and Golden Needles, is women sitting together, crafting and having a really kind of, complex conversation over periods of time. So I designed it and it'd been sitting in my head, and then all of a sudden someone said, oh, council will love that. I'm going to talk to someone at Merry Health. off we went, and it just started before I even had time to think about it. So we ran our pilot last year with no funding. So we had to scramble to get a bit of money in, pull it all together. We ran it as a pilot, and all of a sudden it was born. So I didn't mean to start it. It's just something that happened. And I love it. It was such a beautiful project to run after years of, hard projects and hard casework, family violence. We got to sit and be quiet and reflect and move people forward in terms of how they thought about themselves. So that was a very long answer.
No, I love that. It was really great. I think a few things I wanted to comment on were that, so many times when we talk to women about what they've started, it
Mm.
comes out of this, yeah, things like like something that just lights that fire that you just think, oh, hang on a second, that's that's
That's
not right. I need to do something about that. Yeah.
absolutely that just like when you see it, you can't not do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm staggered by that 1 in 6 number. It's just amazing. I know last year I participated with an organisation called the Forgotten Women in Queensland. They raise money for women in particular who find themselves in homelessness or near homelessness. And I was shocked to hear so many stories of women who were sleeping in their cars in their children's driveways
Yes.
because they'd been kicked out of the house. And I just was blown away that these situations existed.
Yeah, they're just every once you start looking at it, it's just everywhere. And whether you're made homeless or the precarious housing that you do have, which means that you have to be quiet about things that aren't quite right,
Mm,
able to kind of, keep yourself clothed and fed. And there's another data point that really shocked me is that 1 in 8 women murdered are over 70 in family
wow.
violence. And we do not see their faces in any kind of family violence prevention. We see women and children, which is exceptionally important.
Mm,
But there's ageism everywhere, and including, I think, in family violence, is that we do not see the faces of older women. You will only see them if it's a family violence prevention in groups of women, you will get a representation, but focusing on women and their vulnerability, because often in family violence, you might have had a situation of family violence from your partner, and then he dies, and then the son takes
yeah.
over because you have those patterns of violence within families. So it's this huge problem that just doesn't get the airtime that younger women do. So it's not, that it shouldn't be about younger women. It's just, we have a huge problem with ageism everywhere.
A more fulsome picture is what we need to see.
Yep.
Absolutely. I was having a look at your website earlier, Lee, and I absolutely loved looking at the photos from your pilot last year. It was so amazing to see the photos of what these women had created. And I imagine that what you're seeing through this is some real positive changes in people personally and maybe in their understanding of that gendered ageism and more awareness that this exists and listening out for it, perhaps. Can you tell us a bit about what you've seen in terms of outcomes of the program?
Sure. It was a really like it was an experiment. I didn't know if this was going to work or not. I thought it would work, but I had absolutely no idea whether it would. And I went in with my ideas about it, and I learned so much from the women that I worked with, and um, how painful the language that is used against older women and the women, some of the things they said, and there's a particular example which I've seen everywhere in the media about, and I had not even considered this, how permissible it is to show contempt to older people when you're teaching them technology. You see it in ads that, there's that Uber ad that you've got to, call a taxi because there's going to be a fight when you try and teach them. And the women said, I taught my children and grandchildren how to walk, how to talk. I fed them, I nurtured them. And when they have to teach me something, I get this rudeness. And I was thinking, yeah, that's true. It is allowed to, you can sneer and roll your eyes at somebody
Yeah.
when they're trying to learn something. And for people that had not engaged in technology, had, unfortunately been excluded, said, I've been a taxpayer my whole life. And now I'm expected to learn another language at my age. And if I don't, and I was thinking, yes, all the focus has been on, there's something wrong with you if you don't pick up technology, rather than saying these are citizens of our country that have, you know, worked, raised children, voted, and yet it's okay to just wipe them because they've not been able to make this technological change that no one has had to make before. Before, with technology, you could do whatever you wanted. So I had not understood the pain that people felt. And I also hadn't understood how shame women felt about their bodies and their usefulness. And getting a group of women together, you think that we talk about everything, but the women had said, I've never talked about this before, about the things that have been said to me. And I was thinking, how can this be that we sit with this shame about our bodies and not even talk about it? And the group of women that I worked with last year, the craft group had been going for 40 years, week in, week out. And these women had not talked about this thing. So it was just an incredible experience to be able to be with this group of women as they learned and created together. And when I went back to see them, this after the big launch that we had and took their portraits back to them, they said these unexpected things, which one of them said, "Oh, we want to do it again." I'm just like, "Oh." So
Oh,
they'd had this aha moment that was like,
mm,
"Oh yeah, we learned something, something shifted in me. I want to go through the process again." And then somebody else said, I see a thing about family violence on television now, and I know that I'm part of the solution. And I'm just like, oh, the things that surprised me, or like I could not have predicted,
yeah.
was just amazing. And so the last thing, at the launch, we had, about 80 people in the room we did it in Hoppers Crossing in the western suburbs of Melbourne. And I got a question at the end that I didn't expect. The group of women, older women, stood up and said, "Oh, this is fantastic, but we want change. How do we make it happen for older women?" And I'm just like, "Oh, how do you?" The
Yeah.
pathways to feminist and feminism and a movement for women that were active feminists like in the 70s and 80s, are actually locked out of mainstream feminism now as well. I thought, yeah, I don't know. Is
Yeah.
the answer. Yeah. So yes, there is a passion for women, for older women, for change and recognition. So yeah, I loved seeing that.
That's fabulous. I feel, and I've had some conversations with my mum, who's now in her late 70s, and she
Yes.
uses the word invisible a lot.
Yes.
That it's just that sense of, I think, you go through those sort of childbearing years, you have children, you raise them, and then they're grown and have their own families. In my mum's case, my dad passed away about 10 years ago, so she now sort of feels like, who am I now?
Yes.
What am I? No one, sure, there's family around, but you're not anyone's sort of center,
Yes.
so
Yes.
she just uses that word invisible a lot. And I always say, but we're here, you're important to us, like. But she talks about even just at the shops sort of feeling like,
Oh,
you're,
yes.
how do you use self-serve checkouts and those daily things that
Yes.
we take for granted, that is a challenge.
Yeah, it is. It's just it's such a shock when all of a sudden you're not there. And one of my friends said to me, she said, I don't mind being invisible, but I'm tired of people bumping into me. Like they literally don't see me.
Uh,
I'm just like, yeah, it is like it's not even your sense of worth. It is your body is literally
yeah.
invisible as well. And particularly as women get smaller,
Mm,
as you get older, you're like literally shrinking in your visibility.
exactly. Yeah. Well, I guess that leads into my next question, Lee, which is what I see this sort of advocating um, for this as being a challenge, but I'm sure there's other challenges that you've come across along the way as well. Can you tell us a little bit about, some barriers you've hit and how you might be working towards overcoming those?
So the main challenge is funding.
Yeah.
Yep. So I am a sole trader. I work point 0.5 in another job in disability. Um, but right from the start, it's been really difficult to get the funding and I was at the point where I'm thinking, I don't know if I can keep going because it takes so long to write the grants. And this people just aren't interested. It's not a sexy thing. We don't care about older women, so therefore we're not interested in funding anything to do with older women. And I, I got rejected for a grant after having fantastic conversations with, and if you're talking to a grant officer that's an older woman, they get it like that. They just know what you're talking about. And I didn't get a grant that I thought I would get. And I got some fantastic feedback. They said, there's nothing wrong with your application. Your application was great. There's lots of people, blah, 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 blah. And then the woman said, if it had been up to me, I would have funded it because what are we going to do about all these murders of women? And I'm just like, fund prevention. Like,
Yes.
it's right in front of you. Like, it's just this, we are so, it is right to expect money to go to response, but we need to actually, address the fundamentals of, our patriarchal, ageist and sexist society. And you can only do this through awareness and change of language. You need both.
Mm,
So I've found it really difficult to kind of fight into the space of, taking this issue seriously because, the ageism is just everywhere. So that's my main difficulty as a sole trader, to just have the ability to be able to, I can't do it for free
mm,
forever. So that is
exactly.
my main thing. So I'm getting out and about out there. But last week I was approached by an elder abuse prevention network who said, we've actually got some money, we would love to run it. So I'm just like, oh,
Wow.
fantastic. So
Brilliant.
that will be really exciting, and we can deliver it as a model that, I can roll out because I've probably, like once I've tested the IP, it can be picked up more broadly, because we've only done it once. So that is the main challenge of, having to kind of push for
Mm,
funding in its competitive environment
mm,
out there, and, can be a bit lonely when you're a sole trader.
absolutely.
It's
Absolutely. We know that well.
and
And understand that constant, if you find yourself on that sort of treadmill of the grant cycle and going through the process, and then sometimes it's months and months and months until you find out the outcome, and
yes,
you have to plan to be delivering that in case the money comes through and it has to happen.
right.
But if it doesn't, then you've done a whole lot of work for nothing.
Yeah, and I kind of think about my impact and think, oh, well, if I don't get funded, I mean, I have had some impact. The launch was amazing because we had such great feedback. 93% of the people in the room said they had had the aha moment. They realized what it was. They knew how to respond. Like it worked. It's just the slog of,
Yeah,
getting funding up and running.
getting the funding. Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess rolling on from that, Lee, there's probably a few ways if I think about the members who are probably watching this interview,
Yep.
um, how can we help? We can obviously help spread the word, but I think we also need to learn about the language that we use as well, probably subconsciously without knowing it. So what would be your advice to listeners on how we can help?
So there's a two-part. There's a lesson for everyone to listen out for the language. All of us can participate in kind of pushing back against that language. With my group of friends, we have a no self-loathing rule.
Love
is that you're not allowed to actually say anything negative about your body, and actually think about how we, have absorbed those language and challenges, and to just be conscious about, identifying it when you feel your internalized ageism. And that's one of the huge things that we have to unpack, is the internalized ageism, and think about how you might respond. And thinking about what your mum said about invisible, one of the questions that I made up was the opposite. What's the opposite to invisible? It's invincible. That you can actually think about pushing back against some of that language, in your daily life. Um, and looking at, all the social media about aging, and recognizing it for what it is. It's expecting you to not feel value for who you are in the world, and we have to kind of be conscious about that. In terms of support for me and the project, I would love to work with, somebody that's in women's health, and get it out there to actually say, maybe that's counterintuitive, maybe none of the, people in the beauty industry want to help, but for women to live longer, they have to tackle the internalized ageism, and that's a really important, there's such a direct link between ageism and poor health outcomes. So I'd love to work with somebody in health to actually say this is life-saving for women, to recognize their value so that they have got the resources to push back against elder abuse and ageism. So that would be a fantastic partner. Or somebody in craft. I haven't even touched on, one of the main
it.
things about the project is celebrating women's craft as real art.
Mm,
Because the women that I worked with create these beautiful pieces, and they give them to a family member. We don't get to celebrate them as the art. That is very intentional about this is women's art. So anybody in the art sphere that would like to, get involved. So I'd love to work with people to kind of get it out there. And it's also fun to people to do as
yeah,
well. Groups of
yeah.
women. Yes.
Absolutely. And there's so many, women naturally do this. They gather in places. I know my mother-in-law goes to the church every fortnight for craft circle. It's a thing they do, we do anyway.
Yeah,
So
that's
why
right.
not give it a little bit of extra purpose while having that fun
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, and the women love it. Like it's, they're a little bit unsure to start with, but it's such a rich topic for people to kind of sit there and unpack together and have these little aha moments.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm sure we can help to spread the word, and definitely, I think there's some fabulous women I know in the membership who are in the art and health spaces who I'm sure we can connect you with and help to drive that. So
Yeah.
that would be fabulous. I just want to mention quickly, Lee, that the way I came to know of you and of Silver Threads and Golden Needles was through a notification from Hub Australia. So I imagine you're utilising their services in some way to move forward.
It's amazing. I love it. I'm so tired of being at home by myself, and I'm so grateful to get the opportunity to work in such a beautiful environment. And I turned up on my first day and met another social impact person at the desk, and we've become best buddies immediately. She works on conversations about grief and work, and we're just like, oh, we're in the conversations and talking space. So we're like the whole,
Perfect.
and it's just so warm and inviting. I chat to people in the kitchen. They're really interested in what I do. I've made great kind of networks already. And one of the things that I really appreciate, because I've worked in a co-working space before with one of my organizations, and it was just full of tech bros
Yeah.
wearing fleece. And I do feel invisible there, but what I love about Hub Australia, it's full of grown-ups.
Yeah.
And there's lots of women that we chitter chatter and make connection, and it's been fantastic to kind of hear about all of the different things that people do, from banking to marketing to kind of consulting work, which is similar to what I do, to engineering firms. You just get a whole bunch of exposure to people that in my little world of community I would just never get to talk to. So I love it. It's been such a boon.
Yeah, I think even that opportunity to, we talk a lot at Women's Network Australia about how we encourage you to be part of networks in your own industry and, talk to people on that level. But when you step outside of that and you talk to people from different industries, things might not directly relate to you, but they spark ideas and they start conversations, and spaces like that really open you up to that, I guess, water cooler kind of conversation.
Yeah, I've already changed the way I've thought about particular
Yeah.
approaches just from those conversations. We've got a little kind of, little group of the social impact people that chit chat already, but like having exposure to people in business who have already built what you're trying to build. And that having that example in front of you that it can be done, it's possible, is that because it's the hub is full of startups, people who've got the energy and the drive to want to make things different. And with one group I've already connected with, my husband does big data, and I thought, oh, that would be perfect for you, let's see if we can connect you. So they kind of just happen organically, those connections, when you've got a group of people in the room together.
And I think in that space as well, people are open to collaboration. They want to hear opportunities, and it's a great place to make those connections. So
Yes,
that's
yeah,
fabulous.
it's curiosity central, I think, there.
Yeah,
Yes.
excellent. Excellent, excellent. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I think we've talked a lot about the challenges that you faced and the positive outcomes. I'd love to know, you bravely have stepped into this and said, I'm going to start it, I'm going to do it. What advice would you give to other women who are teetering on the edge, sitting on the fence, thinking about starting something and might just need something a little to push them?
um I think you just have to start.
Yeah.
Like, you have to take the first step, and we're so conscious of not doing things right because we've been so disciplined to be perfect in everything that we do, and it's really difficult to take this step to, write your first book, be a business owner, think differently, because we're fearful if we get something wrong. And it's part of, thinking, oh, well, I might fail, but I'll have learned something. And, everybody who has succeeded has got there because they started. And you won't get there unless you try. And, failure and learning is part of it. But that's, it's exciting um, to fail because as somebody who started becoming a sole trader in my late 40s, we're very uncomfortable with not knowing something because you get expert in your career, you know how to do something, and all of a sudden you're in a space where novelty challenges us and you don't know how to do it. And like, it's a very uncomfortable place to sit. So I say to myself, well, people weren't born knowing how to do that thing, they learnt it. I can learn it too. So it's just you have to start and think you can do it, and you can.
Exactly. Oh, thank you so much, Lee. I really want to thank you for taking the time to chat to me today. And I'm so grateful to learn more about silver threads and golden needles. And I think what I love most about this is that we're all here to empower women and help us to feel safer and more secure and hopefully build a brighter future for each other. So really thank you for your time, Lee, and we will make sure there's all the information in the description about how people can get in touch with you and how we can sort of connect with you and hopefully support you going forward. So thank you so much.
The opportunity. Thank you, Beck.